Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Around the Ropes YouTube exclusive. Now, guys, you know I talk a lot about Dynasty. I put them over as much as I can. And, folks, I'm talking about the real Dynasty, not AEW Dynasty that's happening this coming Sunday. But next Saturday, April 27th, Dynasty presents Brace for Impact. And one of the marquee matches, it will see Punk taking on our guest tonight. He was a mainstay of Dynasty. He's a mainstay of Upstate Pro Wrestling. And I personally think has one of the best goddamn entrance musics in all of indie wrestling. The one, the only Sgt Fury makes his debut on the Around the Ropes podcast. Sarge, how you doing tonight?
We are doing great. First off, cheers to having me on. This is awesome. And to be completely honest, I'm humbled that I am part of Dynasty Week. I feel like this is like Shark Week only for wrestling fans when it comes to this upcoming event on the 27th. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's when I put this show together and I started to really become more a part of Upstate Pro Wrestling, because I'm coming down from Long Island. So for me, it's a bit of a hike for a lot of these shows. And I kept hearing your name and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'll be honest, when I first saw you, I was like, is he trying to cosplay the guy from Walking Dead?
That is a very great story. Partly, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, even my ring name, if anyone decides they want to Google, it's Marvel Comics, Sgt Fury, Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos. So when I broke into wrestling, I wanted a military name because I was just leaving the military to become a professional wrestler. It just happened to two ships in the wind. And then over time, people who've known me know that I would cosplay certain comic book characters. And for this one promotion in Buffalo's last show, I cosplayed head to toe as Negan. And I started doing some shows around the area. And one fan was like, well, where's the bat? And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean? They're like, where's the bat? And I was like, oh, that was a one-time only thing. And they were like, well, you should do it all the time. And I'm like, okay. So I got a promoter to allow me to do it. And then next thing you know, one thing led to another, and the evolution of the character eventually in 2019 became the kind of version that you see now, only no Metallica shirt. I was in an Ataxia shirt at the time. So it's kind of funny the way that the universe works, but yes, it's definitely part Negan, but as one of my tag partners recently said, he goes, you're one and the same. It's that version of you is the real version of you in real life. You just happen to not be allowed to carry a bat everywhere. So
yeah, I don't think walking into like a Walmart with a baseball bat would really be a good thing.
It was okay in March of 2020, strangely enough. No one said shit then, but I think the world was a little different in 2020.
Yeah, I would think so. But I want to, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about, especially with what you have coming up at the upcoming show. But before we get into that, you mentioned Ataxia. I definitely want to get into your stint with Immortal, because there is one match I definitely want to talk about. It was what was supposed to be the triple threat match.
Yes.
Because there's one spot I would love to find out whose idea it was. And I hope, and the one spot, and actually we'll talk about that quickly now.
Yeah.
The one spot was with the Legos.
Yes. That was all me. If anyone knows me, I have an affinity for Legos. My son and I build them. And the funny part is for those of you who are listening that aren't from New York, the New York State Athletic Commission are a great group of individuals. But when it comes to the art of hardcore wrestling, they tend to get a little squeamish because of the liability. And for those of you who are parents or not parents who have ever stepped on a Lego, you know how painful it is. For those of you who have ever been power bombed into Legos, it is even more painful. I have done the Lego spot in other promotions, and I've done the thumbtacks spot in other promotions, and The Lego spot gets a louder reaction because not everyone knows what it's like to step on a thumbtack, but everyone knows what it's like to step on a Lego. So that was entirely me. And I would like to thank both Bobby, well, he wasn't in the match at that time, but Richie for trusting in my judgment to know that the moment was going to have impact.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Since you said you've done both the thumbtack spot and the Lego spot, which one was more painful?
The Lego spot was more painful because it was blunt. The thumbtack spot, I got thrown into the thumbtacks 3 times in one match.
Oof.
And it was at World of Hurt in Whitehall, New York, October 25th, 2019. Strangely enough, I know the date. And it was, without a doubt, one of the coolest moments. I didn't feel them. In fact, Mr. Mann, everyone's favorite manager, was my manager at the time. And he actually helped me remove thumbtacks that were even down in my trunks. Like the thumbtacks got everywhere. And I didn't feel them. But when I went through the curtain at Immortal's Stranger Things 4, or Immortal Things 4, sorry, I definitely was in more pain. And in fact, the car ride to Syracuse that night, because I was dating a woman who went to Shania Twain, and we met up in a hotel room out there. Even she had commented, like, what are all these marks? And I'm like, those were Legos. And she just looked at me and she's like, you are nuts. And she's part right. So
I said this in a previous interview to somebody. Being part nuts, isn't that part of the DNA of being a pro wrestler or a pro wrestling fan?
I would like to say yes to both. I think, especially considering, how old are you, John?
I'm 31.
Okay, 31. So I'm going to rewind the clocks back. For those of you who do not know, I am going to be 42 years old in a couple months. I broke into pro wrestling when I was 30. Actually, no, 28. My first match was when I was 30. So I want you to remember, I grew up in a time, I remember the raging 80s. I remember the Attitude Era. And then there's that block of time in between, the some call it the new generation. It was the time in WCW where there were maybe 400 people in the crowd as a wrestling fan. ECW was just kind of bubbling, and it wasn't cool to be a pro wrestling fan. And actually, you were kind of looked down on for being a pro wrestling fan because it was like the coolness went away. So I was crazy enough in an era of like Michael Jordan's Bulls and the Sammy Sosa home run derby with Mark McGuire to be like, I'm a fucking pro wrestling fan. Like, I fucking love pro wrestling. I'm a fucking Hulkamaniacs, S my D. So for people to be, it's wrestling has always been cool. No, there was a couple years there to admit to be a wrestling fan. It wasn't. And I was crazy enough to be one of those people that beat the drum that was like, no, pro wrestling is cool. You just don't think it is.
Well, I laugh now because I was a wrestling fan growing up, stepped away for a bit because I don't remember the reason behind it. Came back in 2013 with Daniel Bryan when he had his storyline with the Authority.
Yes.
And it's been the best decision I've ever made. It's led me now to getting opportunities that I never thought in a million years I'd ever get. And people look at me, they're like, you watch that stuff? Or like, I have people who look at me because like I go to shows, it seems like every weekend, every Saturday I'm on the road.
I do. I'm you're the host. You usually like ask the questions, and you might not have people. I follow you. I watch what you do, and I think that to see someone who is passionate about wrestling going to these shows, yourself, Billy, there's others that I can name. Sean, I'm going to give you a shout out, Sean, and your sister. Like these passionate wrestling fans. If it wasn't for you guys, I'd be wrestling in front of nobody. So to put it in perspective, like whatever rekindles someone's love of the sport and the art, I mean, God bless you for being part of it. It's a journey, man.
Oh, I look at it this way. Being a pro wrestling fan, like I have people now who look at me like, oh, you watch that? I go, Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge sports fan. I mean, to me, it's sports and then it's pro wrestling. People look at me, they're like, oh, aren't you more of a sports fan? I go, yeah, but sports, you have an off season, you have a down period.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, pro wrestling, there's no, and especially doing the show for the last, God, almost 3 years now. As of this November, will be 3 years doing this show.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've even noticed now that there's no downtime.
It's funny. The closest thing that I can compare professional wrestling to is comic books.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Irony, from the earlier Walking Dead and Sgt Fury thing, is comic books are a continuous story that on occasion get rebooted, depending on the company and where they want to go. But for the most part, they're a continuous story. Shit that mattered in 1983 with the reboot of Superman mattered in 92, 93, 94 when they led to killing him off, which now leads into, where James Gunn is going to take his movies, and the storylines that he's choosing to do. These characters and this art form has gone on since, professional wrestling has been around since the carnival traveling days of the 1800s. And the fact that you had George Hackenschmidt in Jenkins in the first recognized heavyweight championship match, and the fact that this lineage that it is in professional wrestling, it's one continuous story. And I think that the best part about pro wrestling is there are echoes of the past in modern wrestling. You just have to either be a student of it or you have to look for it because it's there. And that's, I think, probably what has always made me love this more than anything else.
No, I've also heard, and I've heard the comparison to comic books. I've heard another comparison to pro wrestling, and it's the one time I will ever say these exact words on this program. But I've heard the comparison to soap operas.
Bully, I will go with that.
I've
My
heard that one
mom,
quite a bit.
my mom has watched Days of Our Lives since I was a bitty bitty baby, and you know what? Days of Our Lives still has the same characters that are on the show now, but they just introduce new characters, but they give respect to the past. I will 100% go with that. I've heard professional wrestling be referred to as a male soap opera. But you know what? I don't want to throw shade at it, but Game of Thrones, as much as people want to say it was fantasy, kind of soap opera. Kind of.
But like with me, my mom is a huge General Hospital fanatic.
Okay. So,
and like there'll be times when we're at dinner and her and my dad are talking about storylines with General Hospital. I'm looking at both of them. I'm like, you guys laugh at me when I talk about pro wrestling. Like, there's no difference, really.
no, there's no difference except for the fact that I know that my actors are who they are. They're just turned up to 11, if a Spinal Tap would say.
I totally get that, but I want to get more into the Sgt Fury character before we get into the Dynasty stuff here. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here.
Welcome to my brain. If this was a Sgt Fury podcast, welcome to my brain.
But you have the military background, and I guess the question I have for you is, do you think that your military background helped you with becoming a pro wrestler?
Oh, it was a hindrance, actually. Real life, real shoot. So when I started training to be a professional wrestler, I was still in the reserves at the time. I'd done 4 years active duty, took a 6-month hiatus, and went into a reserves where after my second deployment, I ended up at a wedding where I met a wrestler, Timmy I. Some fans might want to do like a YouTube search of him. Timmy was a fantastic wrestler, very great cruiserweight. And he brought me to Hudson Falls and started to train. The people that I trained with in Hudson Falls, they were all young kids out of high school. And for those of you who want a history lesson, Hudson Falls, New York was World of Hurt territory. In fact, the ring and the building that we worked in had seen so many World of Hurt events, including from Miss DeVille. Matriarchs of the Mat, the Diamonds Division GM, Miss DeVille. wrestled in the building that I trained to be a professional wrestler in almost a decade later. The problem was is I was viewed, and I'm going to say this very derogatorily because it was said to me, the army boy. I was the army boy. And the problem was is I wasn't a boy, I was a man. I was 28 years old. The people who were calling me boy were 6, 8 years my junior. But the other thing is that the way that I break things down and understand things is very methodical. I like to understand why I was doing the moves, how to do them properly. And sometimes people viewed that as a little bit too robotic. Had it not been for Steve Cruz, had it not been for Good Lord Willing and JP Black, really kind of saying, no, this kid can do something, just give him a chance, I wouldn't be on this podcast today. They were very cruel at times with that, not understanding the background of my real life, which the funny part is that the real characters are you turned up to 11. The reason I even chose to do the military character was I was on a show booked by Chip Stetson in Troy, New York in May of 2011. And I just needed a quick character. And I Google searched if any wrestlers were Sgt Fury, and none popped up because I wanted to keep the comic book lineage, but I was still fresh out of the military. I wanted to keep what I knew, so to speak. And then eventually over the years, it morphed into more who I am as a real person.
And first of all, thank you for your service.
I always feel weird when someone says that. Selfishly, there are guys who really did sacrifice. I'm blessed that I'm in the position I am today. Thank you for saying that. It's always weird hearing that. I guess I still view myself as a kid.
I totally get that. But, I want to jump ahead a little bit here because, you've, other than Dynasty, you did some stuff with Immortal.
Yes.
And I know we talked a lot about your match you had at the Cobble Skull show last year, which was originally supposed to be the triple threat, but turned into a singles match due to Bobby Bates being injured. And we have, as of this recording, he has not returned yet to pro wrestling.
No.
Do you have a match or a moment that stands out to you from your time at Immortal?
To be honest, yes. People who want to look at history, and before we went on this podcast, I told you that I'm very honest with history. Yeah. I believe that people omit things and people like to deny their history. I don't. I have to live in it every day. Immortal gave me an opportunity to have a match with Rick Recon in 2019 that was a perfect bow on the story that was Rick and I. I will always tell people when asked who my favorite opponent was and who my greatest opponent was, and I will say Rick Recon. And I was allowed to go out with the Ataxia faction and Wayno against his squad and tell a phenomenal story. And Medusa, Hall of Famer, was in attendance. And I did not know this until later that she pulled Rick aside and said, that was the best match on the card. You all told a story. And I would like people to go back and watch that match. It was Immortal Things 1. Okay. It was at Immortal Things 1, to be completely clear. So I always viewed myself as being the guy who at the Immortal Things show pulled out all the stops. And without getting too teary-eyed, she told Rick that was the best match on the card. It told a solid story. What you don't know is that I was walking away from wrestling around that time because my son wanted his dad. And I wanted to give Rick the flowers I thought Rick deserved. And for Medusa to tell Rick that was the best match on the card, if you go back and watch that match on YouTube, I am crying at the end before he hits me with his finisher, because I was genuinely sad I was leaving professional wrestling at that time, but I was so happy I was leaving it in good hands with the group of people that were in Immortal at that time. I was very sad. And if you go back in the history of Immortal Things, at Immortal Things 2, I returned, which was great. I worked with Justin Credible and Fandango. I was a commentator on Immortal Things 3, and I was in one of what I felt was one of the best matches of the night, if not, close to the best match, other than Garrett Holiday winning the title of the night, because that triple threat match was supposed to be a triple threat match, and had it not been for Destiny taking over, and giving Richie and I the opportunity to spotlight just how fucking phenomenal of a human being Richie is, that match could have turned out way differently. Bobby is a great fucking guy, and I would have liked that match to have been what it could have been, and I would have liked to have seen how the future could have gone with that match and the story going forth. But the universe does what the universe wants to do.
No, and I totally get that. I was actually in the seats, stands, or whatever, however you want to look at it, for Immortal Things 4, and we actually had on Sean Carr.
Yep.
A couple days ago, and I asked him this, and I actually also asked this to Garrett as well. I remember sitting in those seats, and I was sweating my ass off.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine, and Sean said it, Garrett said, I remember after the show, it was kind of hot and sticky in that ring.
Yes, it was. All one needs to do is go back and look at my ring entrance gear as Eddie Munson for that night to see that my white Hellfire Club t-shirt was see-through. And it did not start that way until 5 minutes before I walked out of the curtain. And that's how hot that small building was. But the energy that night was so palpable, I would give 1,000 Hellfire Club t-shirts just for one of those moments. And I'm sure that they would say the same thing about their matches, because both of them had phenomenal fights that night.
I will say, like I said, I noticed it, especially with that show, because I was like, oh, okay, going to a bar, and this shouldn't be that bad. I remember walking in there and sitting there. Now, again, I didn't go into the ring because I've always said I'm far from an athlete, but just being in the seats there, and I'm sitting there, I'm going,
oh, I did not intend on taking my shirt off at that event. I got into that ring and I'm like, nope, I'm not wrestling in this shirt. I can't do this. This is disgusting. This is hot.
Yeah, but again, I give all you guys credit, because that was probably one of the best Immortal shows. Top to bottom.
It was, and I think that whatever has happened has happened. I'm not one to try and fix things that I can't fix, but I will go on record and say that from the bottom of my heart, I do thank Bobby Bates. I do thank Richie the Madman. And, I do thank Mike King for that opportunity. I believe that of any of the Immortal events, Immortal Things was always my show, because I'm a huge Stranger Things fan. Mark would be the most appropriate term. And, for that one night, I got to be Eddie Munson. I went out on my shield. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, and I'll put it, and guys, you can definitely go back and watch it. I think it's on IWTV. I'm not sure.
I think so.
Or you can go to YouTube. It's just, if you go to Google, just search for it. You're not going to want to miss it from top to bottom. It was one of the best Immortal shows I've been to. But I want to make the transition now to Dynasty and what you've done with Dynasty, because I think in the short run, and I said back in October when Dynasty came back, I called it the comeback show originally. Mm-hmm. But then looking back on it, I was like, I don't know if it really can be considered the comeback show. It would be more of a Dynasty 2.0.
So it was definitely a relaunch, back to business. I think, so I need to preface this because, once again, I am a history person. Mm-hmm. I'm honest about history. When I was in the main event, one half of the main event against Rick Recon in the tables match at Table for Two at the Dynasty show before Dynasty shut down, and Mike King went. And once again, I'm Switzerland on this one. I don't know what happened. It is between two men, not Dan Roberts. But what happened was that show, I main evented. I main evented with Rick Recon in a match that did not have the championship on the line. I felt that that was as much a crescendo for me being a villain as could be. And when Back to Business came back into the picture and Chris reached out to me, it was a different Dan. It was a different Fury, if you will. That show happened in 2018. You have to fast forward by the time Back to Business happened. My life changed. So you were not getting this guy who was angry all the time. You kind of got the real me. And I think at Back to Business, that was the first time I really cut a promo prior to that show. And even Chris was like, I don't see Fury, I see Dan. And it's like, because I'm very appreciative of the opportunity. You never get a second chance at life. You get one go. We get one fucking go, people. And when Chris said, we're coming back and I want you to have a match and I want you to have a match with Blaze, what do you feel? How do you feel? The only thing I could tell myself is I wanted to give the fans a thank you, because Dynasty meant so much to me. I was able to have phenomenal matches against guys, Ray Jazz, who has wrestled on NXT and AEW and is now working with Nunzio and Zach Clayton in Impact. I've gotten a chance to work with guys like Rick Recon. I got to be witness to the first ever all-female show in upstate New York. It was Dynasty. You know what I mean? The Diamonds Are Forever show. I was able to sit back and kind of watch these things. And Chris allowed me the opportunity to have freedom in a way I never understood from wrestling. You're usually told this is what you're doing. So for that, I'll always be grateful for Chris. So when Chris wanted to do this, I did not go out there with the intent of pushing myself down people's throats and being like, I'm the heart and soul. The fans that night decided the dude with the baseball bat and the leather coat is the heart and soul of this company. I just happened to be lucky that they gave their trust to me. If that makes sense.
No, and that makes total sense. And obviously, we saw at the relaunch show back in October, Capital Gains, you took on HBO, High Voltage Omar. Now folks, if you missed my interview with High Voltage Omar, definitely go back and watch it, because we talk a lot about this match that I'm about to talk about now with Sarge, and that's your match you had with him. I asked him how important it was for him, and I'm going to ask you the same question. When Dynasty comes back, Chris looks at you and says, okay, we want you on the card. Who do you want to face? How important was it for you to be like, okay, give me a match with Omar, but have it be for who it was for?
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I think that people who don't understand wrestling don't understand that, like, when you're with these people, you show up at shows and you work, but you become friends and you become family. And Jim Anderson didn't know me. You know what I mean? We worked together. Like, we didn't work together. That's the funny part. He had matches in Dynasty and he had, seen me in other shows. But it was the way that he respected me, because we connected on music. Misfits. I love the Misfits. The original Danzig, Jerry only version of the Misfits. And he told me he was in a Misfits band, tribute band, and it was a friendship. And then I'm gonna tell a story. I'm gonna pull the curtain back that during 2020, 2 days happened in a row. The first day was Omar had reached out to me and said, "I'm having a barbecue. I know it's COVID. If you want to come, that's cool. If you don't, you don't." And I said, "No, I'll be there." And my she was the love of my life. My girlfriend at the time, she told me to go. I was a little worried. And, it was just John and Jim and Dan at a barbecue sitting around talking, shooting the shit, being dudes. And John gave us some artwork he had worked on during COVID. And Jim broke a plastic chair. Like, Omar beats me up in the match and is talking about this story. And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional.
No,
and Jim was sitting there. He was eating a plate of barbecue, and one of those white plastic chairs breaks underneath him. The leg cracks because Jim was a mammoth human being. Like, it would have taken 3 Dans to hug one Jim. And we laughed, and Jim didn't move. But the thing that I regret the most about that day is we didn't take our phones out to take pictures. We lived in the moment. And those moments will be in only 2 people's brains from this point forward. And I will always thank John for that day. And I will always appreciate the fact that when Chris asked me who I wanted to work, and I said, I want to work with Omar, but only under the guise that it's for Jim. And the reason why is when Jim passed away in 2021, no promotions around here did a tribute show. And I felt that was fucking bullshit. I hope some people who are listening to this right now hear that I got angry just now because it's real. Like, Jim fucking worked for a lot of you. And the fact that I had to drive to Connecticut to watch a tribute show where Test of Strength and all these other promotions came together, and no real New York guys were represented except for like Garrett Holiday and Omar. It's like, fuck you. This man was a great man. And so when I pitched the idea to Chris was like, let's do it. And then it became a bigger thing. It became this Memorial Cup. And then it became, well, what do we do? And Omar wore his Jim tribute gear, and I wore a Misfits shirt. And, it was this big production. And the woman I was dating at the time looked up and she goes, "How big is this?" And she goes, "I don't understand it." And I'm like, Jim was so loved that it's hard to put into words what it's like to be in a match that has his name tagged on it. And I hugged Omar in the ring that night, and that was real. It was real, man.
Oh, when I asked Omar this when I sat down with him, and he had a similar, he actually told that story about about Jim falling down. And I asked Omar this question. I want to ask you the same question. You've had, you've had a long run so far in indie wrestling. For a non-title match, for a match, didn't have anything really. It wasn't a big, it wasn't like, going for the world heavyweight title or something. Would you, looking back on it now, consider that one of your biggest matches in your career? Was that match that night?
I mean, I've had so many great moments. I think the thing that made that moment the most, I will go on record and say that's my favorite moment in wrestling. And the reason why is I am all about authenticity with who I am, for better or worse. There's been some worse moments. My moment with John HVO in that moment in the ring was the most authentic you were going to get, Dan, because it was 2 guys going out there honoring their friend. And if anyone understood the emotions going into that match, you were lucky. But it took everything I had to keep it together, because that was the beginning of such a big weekend in my life. What would have become a big weekend in my life. I That match was for one person, and I hope to God that he was proud of what we did for him.
I remember I actually said this to John. I'll tell this to you as well. That was probably one of my favorite matches that night. One of my favorite matches that night, because I felt like you guys told the story, and you guys, it wasn't going out there for you to sit there and go, oh, I want to be John, or for John to say, oh, I want to be Dan. It was, no, we're doing this to honor a friend of ours. I also think a lot of it also had to do with the way Empire Live is set up.
Yes, God,
Because,
it is made for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I've said it now. Obviously, I was at the October show. I was at the show in February, and every time I walk in that building and I see the lights come on and I see everything the way Chris has it all set up, I'm looking at this. I'm like, I'm not at a wrestling show, right? I'm not at like a Broadway show or something. And I think that also had a lot to do with it, because the way the setup was. Now, guys, go back to Dynasty's YouTube page. The match is up. Like I said, the match was great, but just look at the setup and the way the lights are, and it's like talking about it now, I have goosebumps. But obviously, you've had a couple matches now before we get into this show, and there was a picture that just came out. I think it was last week, actually. You backstage with Billy, and with the caption of, so I don't remember what it said specifically, but it was almost to the extent of, what's going on with Fury that he hasn't. If you know what picture I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I do. It was tough to see that posted in real time.
Well, let me ask you this though: what is? I mean, is it? I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this question now. Is it something going on that as far as like? It's tough when I even get to the point now of I want to ask a question, but I don't know how to ask the question.
Uh, I've been told numerous times by people, they're just ask a question and you'll get the real response. And
So, okay, I'll put it this way then. Why do you think you haven't gotten that win yet? That's kind of led you on this streak.
loaded question. Um,
This is why
so
I was trying to figure out the best way to
no,
ask this
that's
without
fair.
sound.
It's a fair question. The truth is, man, uh, I'm a human. Uh, and I think that this is one of the things that people understand about me the most. And I think this is probably why, I got the moniker, the heart and soul. And this is probably why Chris understood it. If you were to talk to Dan a few years ago, it'd be a different person. Um, I've lost. Uh, One of my best friends in the business and outside of the business died. Uh, I call her the love of my life. She passed away, a week before he did, in 2020, August of 2020. Uh, and I'm in therapy, and I talk about inadequacy, and I try to do everything I can. We talk about pouring our bucket into other people's buckets to make them better. And at some point, to be honest, it's tough. It's tough to show up to a show knowing that your sister-in-law passed away only a couple days beforehand, and you're supposed to wrestle Fox Vineyard, and Fox Vineyard has been on Ring of Honor. Then that's real life. People, like, my sister-in-law passed away the week of that show. So how am I supposed to show up and perform? You know, I had a match with Blaze Haram, and a couple hours before then, I was in the middle of a breakup where I was having to pack my shit up and get out of a woman's apartment that I was planning to propose to her. You know what I mean? Like, these are real life things that affect a human being. And so if people want to know, like, why is Fury on a losing streak? Maybe it's because in real life, Fury's life isn't perfect. Uh, these are not, you know, violins playing. And I'm certainly not trying to sit here with the audience and gain sympathy points. But I would ask any human being to try and carry that weight with them and try and pretend to be a character so that the person that pays their hard-earned money to see a Dynasty show or any show gets their money's worth. I mean, we're in a different economy now. And I take all of that. So when I lose to Fox or when I lose to Blaze or the potential of my match with Punk, and it's not lost on me who the fuck Punk is. You know, I saw his fucking picture in the locker room of that dingy shithole in Hudson Falls. His fucking picture was right there. He was a World of Hurt original. World of Hurt heavyweight champion. Fucking people love Punk. I shared a locker room with Punk. And I think that that's fucking not lost on me. But in real life, like, can I keep justifying losing? How many fucking losses, man? You know, like, how many losses before it's finally time to say either A, shit really needs to fucking change, or you need to rethink your strategy. And maybe after so many times, how many losses can you have, man?
I totally get that, and to me, I'm looking at this from a fan perspective. I'm not trying to downplay what you've been through, because believe me, it's rough. I totally understand that, but I think with all these losses, to me, it would almost motivate and kind of push me to finally, get the monkey off my back, so to speak.
So I'm going to tell you something that I tell myself every day when I train. Okay. I don't think people understand in my real life. I'm a trainer, I'm a personal trainer, but a trainer has to be more than just a trainer. They have to be a well rounded person, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I will put myself through a blast furnace and I am working my ass off so much that I have my clients noticing, like, you're getting thin, like, you're getting lean. It's not lost on them that there's something there. When you have your back against a fucking wall, like I genuinely believe I do, when I have my back against a wall, that is a version of me that I wouldn't want to go against. That is the version of me that, through better or worse, is the same dude that put all things aside in 2021 to become second on one of the hardest courses that racers in my profession do. You know, I wear it on my fucking hand for a reason. It's because I gave up everything. I gave up time with my son. I gave up time with my girlfriend. I gave up time with everything to give them on that mountain the worst version of me. And you know what? I came in second, but that was second out of only 42 people out of 600. Imagine 42 people completed a course. I'm the same guy that will work his goddamned ass off day in and day out. And if you want to look at it from the perspective of the heart and soul, like Fox Vineyard said, I am the heart and soul of this company. I am beyond the heart and soul because I will be dead in the fucking ground before I let Dynasty burn to the ground. And if that means to some people that it's a win-loss thing, fuck, Punk doesn't know what it's like to go against me. It's billed his first time ever, right? And there's a reason it's first time ever. And I'm going to sound like a dick when I say what I'm about to say. He was fucking protected in World of Hurt. He was protected. We're going to bring Punk in. He's going to work with these select few chosen kids because we want to get them over. You didn't fucking work with me, bro. And I'm being respectful to you. I am acknowledging the fact that Punk, you were around when Steve Cruz was Mr. One Night Stand. You were around when Miss DeVille was Miss DeVille. You were around when Brandon Lee was in diapers and Haas was running the show. Okay? I'm going to give Punk all the credit on planet Earth for who he is, but he has never met a motherfucker like me. Plain and simple. Fucking English. Period. End of fucking story. And the fact that anyone, any fan, any person would wonder what the fuck is walking into that ring. There's a reason Master of Puppets plays every fucking time I walk out there. It's because I pull the fucking strings in the match, not you. If you fucking think you're getting up, it's because I'm fucking allowing it. And yeah, I sound like a dick when I say what I'm about to fucking say. But when you're fucking good at what you do, it's kind of hard to be motherfucking humble. And there's a lot of guys in the locker room that act fucking hard that I would drag into the fucking deep fucking water, and drown and gladly drag my ass back to shore and be like, which one of you fuckers is next? And Jeff Nova, brand new to this company, giving him his fucking flowers. You found that out, kid. So is Brandon Smith. So did Fox. Every motherfucker who's ever stood in the ring with me has been like, you can't hurt him. The only thing that can hurt him is me. And I hurt. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to fucking drag you down to hell with me. Plain and simple English.
Well, if that doesn't get you to buy a ticket for Brace for Impact, I don't know what will. That was probably one of the most emotional promos I have ever heard any independent wrestler ever cut on this program.
It's not really a promo because it's real. I mean, everyone can call me Sgt. Fury all they want, and I'll sign Fury on everything you want me to. But at the end of the day, it's Dan Roberts that wears the leather coat. It's Dan Roberts that walks through with the bat. It's Dan Roberts that does everything. If you want me to play Fury for you, I will play Fury all day long. But at the end of the day, it's me. For better or worse, kids.
Like I said, guys, you're not going to want to miss Brace for Impact next Saturday, live from the Dome. And I'm going to butcher the name. I butcher this every time I said the damn name already. Water of Elite. I think I said it right.
Water of Elite. Yeah, we got it.
Oh, yay. Water of Elite. Because I think I've heard it so many times now that I'm like, I know how to say it now. Guys, you're not going to want to miss this show. But Sarge, last question I got for you.
Yeah.
You said you come into Master of Puppets, and I said this in the intro. One of the only times when I actually pop for an entrance music, because I guess you could say I'm a mark for Metallica.
Same as me.
Gonna put you on the spot right now. Mount Rushmore of Metallica songs.
Okay, so I will go with Master of Puppets, obviously, because of Cliff Burton era. I will say Harvester of Sorrows.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best off of Injustice for All. Mm-hmm. I would add No Leaf Clover because it is one of the only times during the Load era when Jason Newsted was still around. It was S&M, and it was an original song that played for the symphony. It is beautiful, and it has one of my best favorite lines of all time. It comes to be that the light at the end of the tunnel is just the freight train coming your way. It comes to be that the soothing light at the end of your tunnel is the freight train coming your way. And honestly, I would say Creeping Death, Ride the Lightning.
With Metallica, I notice it's tough because they've had so many. Like, I'll give mine quickly before we wrap up this.
Yes, please do. You can't end with asking me this question and me not finding out.
For me, I agree with Master Puppets. I'm actually going to go The Day That Never Comes off of Death Magnetic.
Underrated album.
That for me is number 2. Number 3, I still think is one of the greatest rock song, one of the greatest baseball entrance songs of all time. Enter Sandman.
Okay.
And, number 4, I would go And Justice for All.
That is
one. Sorry, that's
one.
I knew the album. Forgot what song it was.
So one, I would always put in like my top 10 as far as Metallica goes, because that was kind of mainstream's introduction. Quick story before we go off the air. The reason that there's a lot of people that would like to believe that the Eddie Munson moment in Stranger Things is the reason that Master of Puppets is my entrance music. Shout out to my brother Joe, who this August gets the honor and privilege of being with myself and Mr. One Night Stand Steve Cruz at Metallica at Gillette Stadium on night 2. And the reason why is my brother got me into Metallica. And the song I heard first by Metallica was, in fact, Master of Puppets. And my brother looked at me and goes, he's much older than me. He's an old fuck. He looks up and goes, do you even know what this song is about? And I said, yeah, it's about drug abuse. And he stops and he looks at me and goes, and he gets it. And I'm like, I'll never forget that moment. And till the day I die, if you want to know why I am the way I am, it's my brother Joe. He got my interest in metal. So,
well, I was fortunate to see Metallica as well. I saw them 2011 Yankee Stadium.
oh,
I think you know which concert I'm talking about.
I do.
I was there, and here's the other part, and I'll end it with this. I was in the pit for that show.
I have yet to be in a pit for Metallica. It has been discussed by myself and Steve Cruz that when Metallica does their next stadium tour, they're $1,000 a seat, but they have these little reserved areas next to the equipment that you can sit in a chair and watch. It's almost like your WrestleMania seat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I told him if he did that, I would hand him $2,000, one for myself and one for my son Logan, to be able to sit with one of my best friends and just see Metallica at eye level.
But Sarge, I appreciate you hopping on tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely the door is open for you to come back on anytime you'd like to come back on, because I actually came up with an idea in my head about a future YouTube exclusive, which I'll bring up to you after we're done recording.
Okay.
But where can the fans connect with you on social media, and what else would you like to promote?
Okay, cool. So I'm going to promote, you can find me on Facebook, Daniel Roberts. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the Sgt Fury. I was fortunate enough to get both of those, which is great. You can, and for that, you're going to find it's a little weird because the persona you would think is all pro wrestling. But in my real life, I'm a certified personal trainer, and I'm a Spartan SGX coach at the gym in Queensbury, New York. And I train everybody. In fact, one of my old friends from professional wrestling who's recently come back with some injuries and everything that we're starting to work through. I don't want to call myself like DDP in that aspect, but helping people become better people through fitness is my number one goal. And I know that you've gone through your fitness goal in the last couple of years, which is amazing. Kudos to you, John, for that. And it's my life goal outside of professional wrestling to impact people's lives through the betterment of psychology mixed with athleticism. So with that, you can find me at the gym 518 on all your social medias, or the gym _QBY for Queensbury. And you can reach me if you're interested in personal training, whether one-on-one or I do Zoom personal training, Daniel at thegym518.com.
Again, guys, you can catch Sgt Fury taking on Punk. And after that emotional promo, and I know he doesn't want to call it a promo, but it definitely felt like a promo. Definitely catch Sgt Fury take on Punk next Saturday live from Waterville, New York at the Dome as Dynasty presents Brace for Impact. Sarge, I said this before, I'll say this again. One of the best entrance musics in all of independent wrestling. And like I said, the door is open for you anytime you'd like to come back on.
Thank you very much, John, for having me in. And thank you, everybody. Show up, Waterville Dome, April 27th. just to put the importance of this match, I had a 50K planned that day. And when I saw the date, I canceled it immediately, regardless of who I was facing. And now that I'm facing Punk, it makes it even sweeter.
Guys, for Sgt Fury, I'm John. It's been Around the Ropes, YouTube exclusive. We'll catch you guys next time.